All right, here we go. Me Terra Bank. Me Terra Bank is a fun question. I think that it's hard if you don't know the lingo, and it's easy if you do. So here we go. We got a bank balance sheet. We got two sides, assets and liabilities. You'll notice, just like everything else we've ever done with bank balance sheets, the two sides add up to $100,000. It's a pretty simple one. So thank you, College Board, for that. All right, what is the reserve requirement? So we're going to calculate this, and we're going to lay this out just like we would on a blank piece of paper for our assessments or AP exam. The reserve requirement, again, we're going to take the required reserves that are listed here, and we're going to look at the demand deposits or total liquid assets on the right-hand side and figure out what percentage they are. And $10,000 is 10% of 100,000. So we get a point just for being able to do a percent correctly. Assume that Lewis withdraws $5,000 in cash from his checking account at Me Terra Bank. Lovely. By how much will Me Terra Bank's reserves change based on Lewis's withdrawal? So remember, this money in the bank, this is all the same money. And I think that we forget sometimes that even though he has his money in a demand deposit, they actually are going to cover that demand deposit by going into the excess reserves. The excess reserves are all the money that they have available to loan to people, but they also belong to individuals, right? So Lewis is going to go in and he's going to take out that $5,000, and that's how much their excess reserves, or their reserves rather, are going to change based upon the withdrawal. And that's part one. Part two asks us a little bit more of a complicated question because we need to explain what is the initial effect of the withdrawal on the M1 measure of the money supply. Again, he's taking cash out of checking, and both of those things are M1. So we're going to say, due to the fact that cash and checking are both part of the M1 money supply, there will be no impact on M1. Rather, only the composition will change. And I have just looked at a lot of these questions, and I feel like just alluding to the composition is a great word to put in your answer, in your explanation. Okay, so part three. It says, as a result of the withdrawal, and I think that this is the tough part of the question for kids. What is the new value of the excess reserves on the balance sheet at Me Terra Bank based on the reserve requirement from part A? So again, we're looking for a new value. So the word value implies that we're going to have a dollar amount here, and then it says based on the reserve requirement. So we're going to have to use the reserve requirement that we just calculated, which was 10%. So let's go to the bank balance sheet. So he's going to withdraw $5,000. So that means that this is going to become a zero, and the demand deposits are going to change to $95,000. Okay? Now remember, the reserve requirement was 10%. So legally, the bank only has to keep 10% of $95,000 in the required. So 10% of $95,000 is no longer $10,000. It is $9,500. So now $10,000 used to be what's in there. Now they only have to keep $9,500. So how much is left that they can now move into the excess reserve? You're correct. It's $500. So part three, the answer is 500. And it's 500 again because the demand deposits changed to 95 because Lewis took out his money. Therefore, they only have to keep $9,500 in the required. That frees up $500. They can now move into the excess. Part C, assume that on the next day, John withdraws from Me Terra Bank an amount that exceeds the bank's excess reserves. So they only have $500 in there, and let's say John walks in and says, hey, I'd like to take $1,100 out of my checking account. How are they going to make up that extra $600? Well, there's a couple of things. They could call all these people with the loans, and they could say, hey, Mr. Martin, you need to pay off that $5,000 car loan that we gave you a year ago. the College Board is saying in this question that they're taking that option off the table. So they've said, assuming that no loans are called in. So they're saying you can't pull from this 85,000. It's off the table. How can they recover their required reserves? First of all, this is stuff from Chapter 34. This is the monetary policy tools, and we learn with interest rates that banks can borrow from two different places if they lack the funds, and they're charged a different interest rate depending on who they borrow from. So the answer to Part C is that they could borrow from another bank. And you guys will learn, or you have learned, that the interest rate that they borrow from another bank is called the federal funds rate, or they can borrow from the Federal Reserve. And the interest rate that they use from the Federal Reserve is called the discount rate. So that's stuff from Chapter 34. Depending on when you're watching this video, you may or may not have learned that yet. So Part C, we're borrowing from either another bank or the Fed. All right, that's me, Tierra Bank. Lovely. Hope you enjoyed it.